Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and we're looking at Star Trek Strange New Worlds, episode number 3 of the first season, of course, and it's called Ghost of Ilaria. Have you noticed? I'm not really shaved. Now, another good episode. However, there are a few problems that I do have. Let's talk about a little about the plot, and then I'll tell you about what I liked and what I did not like. But yes, another really well acted, well performed, although there are a few things in the writing which I'm not really a fan of. This one sees the crew of the Enterprise, well, not all of them, but everyone, including the captain and the first officer, Spock. They're all on an alien planet. They've gone to one of the outposts of the Ilarians, who are a race of aliens who wanted to be part of the Federation for the most part. However, they were denied access because they did a lot of genetic engineering, and with Earth especially having had problems with with Khan Noonien Singh and the eugenic wars, this was a big no-no as far as Starfleet and the Federation were concerned. So therefore they were not really accepted in the Federation. So thanks to their history of genetically altering themselves in order to make themselves better, this organization basically is not part of the Federation at all. However, they go to this planet, which is a colony of Ilarian, and there is a big, huge ion storm coming in. It's been abandoned, so the officers are down there looking at checking to see what has happened. Because of the ion storm, they need to get back in. However, everybody else is beamed up, and we see a little bit more of Hemmer in this episode because he's got to work his magic. He's got to add extra power. I really like his character, by the way, even though as of right now he's not been given way too much to do. So everybody else is beamed back with the exception of Pike and Spock, and because of the ongoing ion storm, they need to take refuge in one of the big buildings, which is basically worked out like a library of their history. While on the ship, it seems that several people have been infected by a virus that makes them want to reach out towards light. So we see one of the crewmen, kind of like a red shirt character from the DOS era. But anyway, he is the first one to get infected, and he breaks apart some glass so that he can get into light. And we see a lot of people start getting infected. They're brought to the sick bay, and finally it is just a couple of people who are not infected. We find out Una, number one, initially shows sign of infection. She seems to glow with some particular light, but she seems to be the one who's immune, and she tells Dr. Mbenga and Nurse Chapel that she's, even though she's infected, she seems to be immune. The other person that seems to be immune is, and that's because, as they explain, Uhura was sleeping in her quarters in the dark when most of the people were getting infected, and therefore she didn't get infected. So she also escaped it at the moment, and they don't actually show her getting infected later on, which is actually funny. In the meantime, Spock and Pike are trying to get to know more about the Ilarians, and Pike is basically pacing around really madly because he wants to get back to the ship since he finds out that there is infection. Excuse me. Spock basically says this dialogue, which is I've earmarked over. Excuse me. Which I've marked over here, called "I am arming us with knowledge." It turns out to come true a little later because in the midst of the iron storm, they seem to be attacked by these beings of light, source of energy actually going by. Looks like they are aliens out to attack them. However, it ends up being that these beings protect them from the effects of the ion storm when it actually gets a little too much for them. And we find out that these are actually the Ilarians who have, possibly mutated into these kind of life forms. We don't get to know for sure completely, but it does look like that. Meanwhile, on the ship we have almost everybody with the exception of Nurse Chapel and Mbenga and Una, who are infected. They're trying to find ways. Even Hammer is knocked out by Una because she's got um, because he's infected and he's looking for ways to do it. We have an exchange between Laan Nguyen Singh and Una, because we later find out that Una is actually Ilarian, and she was one of the beings of Ilarians who actually wanted to become part of Starfleet. They wanted to join the Federation. They wanted to join Starfleet. That's all she wanted. So she's actually hidden her past. Kind of like I guess they look like more like humans. So she's been able to hide it. I don't know how that was possible, but she is not human. She is actually Ilarian, and she confesses to Pike as well at the end of the episode. But I digress. She and Laan have it out because Laan has got her problems with people who have done augmentation on their body, on their being, because she, having been considered a descendant of Khan Noonien Singh, and that stigma that belongs to it, she's always lived her life. She's had kids threaten her, and rebuke her because she was connected to Khan, and she and Una have it on words. But in the end, things are actually sorted out. But there is a question in which why the infected, when they were beamed onto the ship, why it wasn't actually sorted out by the medical transporter. Why didn't actually point out that there was this possible infection and then take over and it not get filtered out. So apparently when Una goes and questions Mbenga, we find out that his daughter, he's got a young daughter who is actually ill with a particular disease. I'm not really sure what disease it is. I'm trying to look and see if it's actually mentioned. So the medical transporter malfunctions because he has his daughter who is actually, she's dying of this disease, and he's trying to look for a cure, but because time will run out for her, he's got her pattern stored in the buffer of the medical transporter, and basically holding her in stasis. So, and he lets her out once in a while so that he can interact with her, but for the most part she is stuck in the medical transporter's buffer, so that he has enough time to actually come up with a cure. So when he's not on duty, he does his research to try and find it, and he confesses to Una about it, but she decides to keep it among herself. And there's some wonderful transition scenes in between, of course. And then we get to that scene where she goes to Pike and tells him about this, and he says, I don't want your resignation. She offers to resign, but he says, I don't want your resignation because you're the best damn first officer in Starfleet, and therefore no one else needs to know. We'll keep it among ourselves for the time being. And she keeps the secret of Mbenga as well. So we do see a nice scene at the end, Mbenga and his daughter, interacting and playing a little bit. So there's a few things, like I mentioned, I'm not really happy of. One is that basically as to how he is being able to keep his daughter over there, and no one else seems to know. Seemed a little odd at that particular point. And again, this leads me to the fact that every character in Star Trek right now, in the newer Star Trek, needs to have this dark background. Una with her history, Uhura with her history, Laan Nguyen Singh with her history, Pike, of course, with her history, and now Mbenga with her history. Now we have to check out and see whether Hammer, whether Ortegas, whether anybody else is, and Nurse Chapel, of course, going to have these. I don't think the show at least needs that. I want some happy Starfleet people, by the way, who are my heroes or the heroes of the show, and leading pretty much normal lives, going back to their family during show leaves, and but it just seems like everybody has got this kind of dark history behind them and trauma of all that stuff, and of course that leads to the fact that they get their family in Starfleet, they get their family on the Enterprise and all that. I think that's where they're kind of leaning forward. but I wish they actually did stay away from these kind of things. There's a few things, like I mentioned, the premise is not something that's new. I've seen it in Star Trek before. Couple of episodes actually do come to mind. One in Voyager, one in TNG, maybe some other shows as well. But the execution is pretty good. Even it's the trope is basically familiar. Um, we've seen a lot of it before, but that's pretty much um, a well executed uh, episode. Plot wise, though, I'm not really that happy about certain things. Um, and the fact that Uhura shouldn't have actually, I mean, she should have ended up infected later on, is what I'm saying. What else? And yeah, this new thing about Ilaria, Una being an Ilarian is also something that which I'm not really. I mean, it just felt like unnecessarily. Didn't really need to have it. So now we got all these characters with something or the other problematic, but it's still a really good show. This episode gets a 7.5 out of 10 from me. Like I mentioned, I'm knocking points because of certain things. Um, and especially the Mbenga part, wasn't really a big fan of it. And to be honest, I'm not I think earlier on, I think he was okay. This episode, I'm not really liking the character as much. The actor, I've never seen him anything before, so I'm not really sure, but I just felt it was a little odd. So, um, yeah, but I think it might balance it out because I did like him in the first, especially in the first episode. So I guess it's okay. The next week we're actually getting the Gone. I'm delayed in actually shooting this, so I will upload it ASAP. But that's it for tonight. Episode number 3, 7.5 out of 10. Have a good night, guys. Bye bye.